Hey guys, tonight we begin with a world where your breath clouds in front of your face the moment you exhale, even though you're inside your own home. The medieval night is settling, and you're about to discover what cold truly means. You probably won't survive this, but let's try anyway. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across a packed dirt floor. The ground so hard and chilled, it feels like a frozen pond beneath your bare feet. The walls around you are thin sticks, smeared with mud, straw, and dung, and every gust of winter air finds a crack to squeeze through. You pull your woolen cloak tighter, but it does little. The hearth in the middle of the room spits and hisses a weak flame, fighting against a tide of icy darkness. The fire is your lifeline. If it dies, so do you. You huddle closer, smoke stinging your eyes as it struggles to rise out through a gap in the roof. Chimneys aren't common yet, so the air inside is thick with fumes. It's irritating, yes, but also strangely protective. The smoke drives away fleas, lice, and sometimes even rats. You cough into your sleeve and try to ignore the acrid taste. At least it means the pests suffer too. Historians still argue whether the average peasant accepted this smoky atmosphere willingly or simply had no choice but to endure it night after night. The cold creeps in from everywhere, through the walls, under the roof, even from the dirt below. You sit cross-legged by the fire, rubbing your hands together, listening to the wind howl like an angry spirit outside. In wealthier homes, floors are layered with straw or rushes, but here the ground is nearly bare. You can feel frost nibbling at your toes as if the earth itself wants to claim your warmth. Sometimes villagers add new straw on top of the old, creating layers of damp, decaying vegetation. It stinks, but it offers insulation. Modern carpet padding suddenly sounds luxurious by comparison. Behind you, the bedding is nothing more than a sack of hay with a blanket of rough wool. You lie down the straw, crunching, poking through the fabric to scratch your back. Fleas jump across your skin, unwelcome companions that thrive in the warmth of your body. There's no mattress, no pillow, just an itchy pile that must be endured. Imagine trying to get comfortable while one side of you freezes and the other sweats from lying too close to the hearth. It's less sleep, more survival exercise. To make matters worse, food is scarce. Tonight's meal was gruel oats boiled with water until they became a gray paste. It fills your stomach, but offers little energy to fight the cold. Tomorrow, maybe some bread baked with bits of rye and barley, dense and sour. For those with means, meat or cheese might appear once a week, but for you, a full belly is rare. Malnutrition weakens your body, making every winter chill more dangerous. It's no wonder so many never lived to see old age. And yet there are tricks. You sleep with others, family, neighbors, even animals, because body heat is the only free insulation. Chickens rustle in the rafters, a goat shifts near the door, and you can hear the rhythmic snorting of a pig not far from your bed. The smell is unbearable, but you've grown used to it. At least the animals add a degree or two of warmth. People pack together, like logs on a fire, each person a shield against the freezing air. Personal space doesn't exist. Survival trumps comfort. Sometimes you wake in the middle of the night to stoke the embers. Letting the fire die is not an option. Matches don't exist. Flint and steel are unreliable, especially with frozen fingers. So you practice fire banking carefully, covering the glowing coals with ash so they survive until morning. If you're lucky, you'll poke at the gray mound at sunrise and see a faint red glow. If not, the day begins with bitter cold and despair. Families argue over the best fire banking methods, each swearing by their own little tricks. It's the medieval version of debating barbecue recipes, only the stakes are higher. You're fighting for life itself. You glance upward at the thatched roof. It sags under the weight of snow-dripping water, in places inviting birds and insects inside. On stormy nights, the wind rips through the gaps, like a thief stealing what little warmth you've gathered. And when you roll over on your straw sack, you hear the squeak of a mouse scurrying across the floor. Privacy doesn't exist. Even your sleep is a communal activity with vermin livestock and siblings all sharing the same space. Think about it today. We complain when the thermostat dips a couple of degrees or when a draft sneaks in through a poorly sealed window. In this world, the entire house is one giant draft. Every night is a gamble against frostbite. You would trade all the Netflix and soft blankets in the world for just one night in a heated room. The reality check is sobering. Waking up alive in the morning is not guaranteed. For peasants, opening your eyes after a night in that frozen, smoky, crowded hut is nothing short of a miracle. Children and the elderly are especially vulnerable, and families quietly expect losses during the harshest months. When someone does survive, it's worth a celebration. Maybe an extra slice of bread, if you have it. And yet, life goes on. You find ways to laugh, to share stories around the fire, to gossip with neighbors about whose goat broke into the bread bin this time. It's grim, yes, but not entirely hopeless. Humans adapt even when the odds are stacked against them. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, with smoke burning your eyes, straw scratching your back, and frost creeping through the cracks, you clutch your thin blanket tighter and whisper a silent prayer. If you're lucky, you'll wake up with all your fingers and toes intact. And if not, well, at least you won't have to face another medieval winter night. You shuffle out of your straw bed. Stretch through the movement does little to ease the constant ache of cold. Morning light sneaks through the cracks in the walls, illuminating faces that look older than their years. Then someone yawns, exposing a mouth that is a battlefield of decay teeth, blackened, broken, and missing. In the medieval world, a smile isn't a sign of joy. It's often a grim reminder of pain. You reach up to touch your own jaw, half expecting a tooth to loosen at the pressure. Toothaches are not just common, they're inevitable. The medieval diet, heavy on coarse bread, often filled with grit from grinding stones, wears teeth down like sandpaper. Imagine chewing pebbles with every meal, and you'll understand why mouths deteriorate so quickly. And when a tooth begins to rot, the suffering is relentless. Historians still argue whether some peasants tried herbal remedies first, or whether they simply prayed until the pain was unbearable enough to demand action. That action, of course, was rarely gentle. Dentistry doesn't exist in any modern sense. There are no clean clinics, no sterile tools, no polite dentists humming while they work. Instead, you're at the mercy of the local barber surgeon, a man who might cut hair in the morning, drain blood at noon, and yank teeth by evening. He approaches with iron pincers, rough hands, and zero anesthesia. The procedure is brutal. One strong grip, one wrenching twist, and your tooth is out, along with a piece of your gum if you're unlucky. Your scream echoes through the village, joined by the laughter of children who know they're next someday. And if you think losing a tooth ends the nightmare, think again. Infection lurks at every corner. Without antibiotics, a simple abscess can swell your face grotesquely, heat your body with fever, and sometimes even kill you. All from a single tooth. People die not of great wounds, but of rotting molars and pus-filled gums. A gruesome fate for something you barely notice in the mirror today. Some try home remedies. First clove oil for numbing garlic, pressed into aching gums, or even a poultice made of herbs and wine. But desperation breeds stranger ideas. Records mention frog fat rubbed onto cheeks, or charms whispered by so-called healers. A priest might mutter a blessing, promising divine relief if you fast or offer prayers. Meanwhile, the pain gnaws deeper, a steady throb that keeps you awake in the frozen dark. Teeth are currency in this world. A full set of strong white teeth is rare, almost enviable. By middle age, most peasants are half toothless. Their smiles, ragged, their words slurred by gaps. Children suffer too malnutrition and poor hygiene, rotting their baby teeth before they fall out naturally. It is not unusual for a 10-year-old to look like a toothless elder. When someone manages to keep a single healthy tooth well into adulthood, it's almost worth celebrating like a relic. You poke at the remains of breakfast, a hunk of hard bread, barely softened by dipping it in ale. You gnaw carefully, wincing each time a sharp edge brushes a sore spot. You know others who can no longer chew at all, surviving on thin broths and mashed turnips. Without dentures, without soft modern foods, they simply waste away. In some ways, tooth decay is as deadly as any sword. Imagine a wedding. The bride lifts her veil. Her lips tremble into a smile, and instead of pearly white, she reveals jagged stumps and blackened gums. Romance wilts quickly in the face of rot. Medieval poets praise rosy cheeks and golden hair, but they avoid writing about the smell of infected mouths. The stench of decay is everywhere, unavoidable, woven into the very air you breathe in a crowded feast hall. If you lived, then you'd guard your teeth like treasure. But brushing doesn't exist. Not really. At best, people rub their teeth with twigs or linen cloth. Powdered charcoal is sometimes used, gritty and foul-tasting, but effective at scouring. Wealthier nobles dab honey or mint onto their gums, hoping to freshen their breath. Ironically, honey only feeds the bacteria, accelerating the very rot they fear. In truth, no one escapes. Even kings suffer agonizing abscesses, their physicians helpless. Think of the irony today. We pay fortunes for whitening strips, braces, and implants. Back then, people simply prayed not to die from their jaw swelling shut. And when the pain struck, the only real cure was courage or madness enough to let someone yank the tooth from your skull. You rub your jaw again, feeling phantom pain as you imagine it. The fire sputters behind you, and outside, the icy wind continues to moan. Hunger gnaws at your stomach, but toothache might gnaw harder. In this medieval world, survival isn't just about warmth or food. It's about whether you can keep chewing long enough to see another winter. You sit by the smoky hearth again, clutching a wooden bowl filled with what passes for dinner. It's not the taste that unsettles you, it's the crunch. Every bite carries a gritty edge, as if sand has been stirred into your stew. That's not an accident. The bread and porridge of the medieval world are laced with tiny shards of stone from grinding flour on rough millstones. Your teeth scrape, your jaw aches, and you wonder how much enamel you've lost already. Food is a necessity, not a pleasure. Peasant diets rarely wander beyond bread pottage and whatever scraps can be gathered. Pottage is the catch-all dish, a watery stew of beans, cabbage, or oats, simmering endlessly in a pot blackened by smoke. Every day it tastes the same, and every day you eat it again. Sometimes it's bulked out with onions or garlic, sometimes with a bone boiled so long that it has given up all hope and most of its flavor. And yet it's not just blandness you endure. Bugs are unavoidable guests at the table. At grain stores teem with weevils and beetles, their tiny bodies ground into the flour along with everything else. You don't bother picking them out. You probably wouldn't have enough to eat if you did. They add crunch protein and a reminder that life here is less about appetite and more about survival. Historians still argue whether medieval people even noticed the insects, or whether they accepted them as casually as you accept crumbs on a table. The smell of your meal is heavy, earthy, and faintly sour. Bread is dark, dense, and sour tasting from rye or barley. White bread is a luxury reserved for the nobility, something most peasants may never taste in their lives. For you, the loaves are so heavy, they could double as weapons. Sometimes the bread is stretched with fillers, ground beans, acorns, or even chalk to make it last longer. Too much chalk, and you're not eating food at all. You're gnawing mortar. Water is risky, so ale accompanies nearly every meal. Even children drink it weak, though it is. But ale does nothing to improve the meal itself. The combination of stale bread, bitter cabbage, and a foamy sip of beer leaves your stomach heavy and your mouth desperate for something fresh. A piece of fruit would be a treasure, an orange unimaginable. And yet, on rare feast days, you glimpse what the wealthy enjoy. A roasted goose skin glistening with fat, a table laden with venison-spiced wine and custard sweetened with imported sugar. You stare hungrily from the sidelines, your own bowl of pottage cooling in your hands. Nobles gorge themselves on meat 3 times a day, while you chew bean paste until your jaw tires. The divide between rich and poor is as wide as the church nave, and you stand firmly on the wrong side of it. But even noble food hides dangers. Meat is often salted beyond recognition to preserve it, then boiled to soften the toughness. Fish may arrive at a castle already reeking, but it is served anyway, with spices to mask the rot. Spices, pepper, cinnamon, saffron aren't just luxury. They're camouflage. They tell guests, yes, this meat has traveled too far and too long, but eat it anyway. You spoon another mouthful of pottage, closing your eyes against the bitterness. The taste is dull, but your stomach welcomes the warmth. Some peasants survive on this gruel for months at a time, dreaming of variety they'll never taste. Malnutrition, common scurvy, silently rots. Gums, rickets, bends bones. Children grow frail on diets that fill bellies, but starve bodies. You might not notice the lack of vitamins until your teeth loosen or your bones ache in the cold. Now picture yourself at a feast in a crowded hall. Flickering torchlight casts shadows across trestle tables, trenchers of bread serving as plates. People tear at hunks of greasy meat, with their hands tossing bones to the dogs beneath the table. There are no forks, no napkins, only fingers wiped on tunics or shared cloths. The smell is overwhelming, meat sweat smoke and the sour tang of ale. Somewhere, someone coughs into the communal salt bowl. You dip your bread in it anyway. If all this sounds bleak, you're right. But for medieval peasants, food is not about flavor. It is fuel, plain and simple. It keeps you alive through another frozen night, even if it wears down your teeth and fills your gut with grit. You dream of sweetness, of freshness of fruit that doesn't make your jaw ache. but dreaming is all you can do. Tonight you scrape your bowl, clean, picking up the last grains of barley with your fingers. Hunger gnaws, but the meal is over. You sigh, stomach half satisfied, jaw sore from chewing. Tomorrow will bring the same. A new pot of pottage, a loaf of bread like a stone, and the unshakable crunch of dirt between your teeth. Welcome to dining in the Middle Ages. You sit cross-legged by the embers, scratching at your skin, which smells faintly of sweat smoke and livestock. A thought creeps into your mind. When was the last time you bathed? You search your memory, but give up. It could have been months. In the medieval world, water is not a friend. It is a danger, a luxury, and sometimes a joke. Bathing is rare. In villages, streams and ponds are used for washing clothes, livestock, and sometimes corpses. You hesitate before stepping into the same water. The risk is obvious. Water carries disease more efficiently than almost anything else. Historians still argue whether peasants avoided bathing because they understood this or because hauling enough water was simply too exhausting to justify. Either way, most choose to stay dirty, masking odor with herbs or heavy clothing. When you finally do wash, the experience is far from refreshing. You step into a wooden tub filled with lukewarm water that's been carried in buckets from a nearby well. It takes hours to fill, so the entire household uses the same bath. You may go first if you're lucky. If not, the water is already cloudy with dirt, sweat, and hair floating in it. By the time the last child is dunked, the bath resembles soup more than cleanliness. Soap, as you know, it doesn't exist. There are crude substitutes, ash mixed with animal fat, creating a lye-heavy sludge that burns more than it cleans. If you're wealthy, you might afford perfumed oils or imported soaps from the East, but for the average person, a scrub with rough cloth or sand has to suffice. Clean skin comes at the cost of raw, irritated flesh. You rub until you're red, then wrap yourself again in the same unwashed tick. Public bathhouses do exist in towns, and for a brief moment they feel like a miracle. Steam rises, voices echo, and bodies sink into shared tubs. Men and women sometimes bathe together to the horror of later moralists. But bathhouses earn reputations beyond cleanliness. They become centers of gossip, relaxation, and occasionally vice. The church frowns on them, declaring that nudity and temptation lurk in every steamy corner. Many bathhouses eventually close, leaving filth to reclaim the streets. Imagine stepping into one of those bathhouses, a candlelit hall water, sloshing steam blurring outlines of strangers. You lower yourself and sighing as heat soothes your frozen limbs. Then you notice the floating scum, the faint smell of mildew, and the realization that 50 others have soaked here before you. Cleanliness is an illusion. The comfort fades quickly when you remember that warm water is also the perfect breeding ground for disease. For the poor, washing is more ritual than hygiene. A splash on the face before church, a rinse of hands before meals, and perhaps feet washed at night. Entire bodies might go unwashed for months. Instead, people disguise odor with herbs, rubbing rosemary or lavender on skin-hanging sachets of mint around the neck. It doesn't remove the stench, but it masks it. Think of it as the medieval version of spraying deodorant over sweaty gym clothes. And yet, nobles face the same dilemma. Their castles have chambers with tub servants to haul water perfumes to dab behind the ears. But even royalty cannot escape the fundamental problem. Stagnant water is dangerous. Kings and queens often smell just as pungent as peasants, though with a layer of rose oil or musk attempting to disguise it. A courtier once complained that perfumes mixed with sweat created a stench worse than either alone. Imagine a royal hall, heavy with incense and unwashed bodies, all pretending that nobody notices. You scratch your arm again, remembering the last bath you endured icy river water that left you shivering for hours. You came out feeling cleaner, but also convinced you might die of the chill. Warmth is precious, and sacrificing it for temporary freshness feels foolish. You pull your cloak tighter, telling yourself dirt is just another layer of protection. Of course, dirt is also disease. Lice burrow in hair fleas, bite through clothing, and skin infections spread like wildfire. Children scratch until they bleed. Adults carry sores that never heal. Without soap, without antiseptic cleanliness, is not about health. It's about survival of the strong. Those who endure the filth live on. Those who don't fade quietly into the statistics of medieval life. You laugh bitterly, thinking of modern complaints, a cold shower, a broken hot water heater, a missed shampoo day. In this world, one bath a year is considered plenty, and too much washing is believed to weaken the body. Doctors even warn that pores opened by warm water invite sickness inside. Dirt, ironically, is thought to protect you. So tonight, you curl up again on your straw bed, unwashed, smoky, and itching. You dream of warm showers, scented soap, and clean towels. But when you wake, you'll splash your face with icy well water, rub your cloak against your arms, and carry on. For in the Middle Ages, the choice is simple: stink and survive, or risk bathing and regret it. You stir awake with a groan clutching your head as if an unseen hammer is pounding inside your skull. Illness is constant. Earaches, fevers, and strange swellings that never seem to go away. And when you finally drag yourself to the village healer, the answer is almost always the same: you need to bleed. Bloodletting is the cure of choice for nearly every ailment. Headache, bleed. Fever, bleed. Stomach cramps, definitely bleed. The belief rests on the idea of balancing humors, the four fluids that supposedly govern your body: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of one, and sickness strikes. To restore balance, physicians argue blood must be drained. Historians still argue whether some doctors sincerely believed in this method, or whether it was simply a convenient way to look busy while patients suffered. The tools are crude but terrifyingly effective. A scalpel, a sharp lancet, or even a leech pressed against your skin until it latches and sucks. The barber surgeon who cut hair yesterday and pulled a tooth last week now ties your arm tight with a cloth and makes a small incision. Warm blood flows into a bowl, the sight both horrifying and strangely routine. People expect it. Some even insist on it, convinced the procedure keeps them alive. But not everyone survives. Too much bloodletting weakens the already fragile. Children faint, the elderly collapse, and some never rise again. Imagine losing half a liter of blood in a world where your daily diet barely sustains you. Strength drains from your body, your vision darkens, and the cure becomes a death sentence. And yet families line up clutching pennies to pay for the chance. Hope is worth the risk. Leeches offer a gentler version, if by gentler you mean slow, slimy, and unsettling. The creatures wriggle against your skin before sinking tiny teeth into flesh. You lie still shuddering while they drink your blood. In wealthier households, jars of leeches are kept like medicine bottles. Servants retrieve one, press it onto the master's arm, and wait until it falls off bloated and satisfied. Some nobles even name their leeches, treating them like foul little pets that keep them balanced. And when bleeding fails, the physician prescribes purging, inducing vomiting, or diarrhea with herbs. Again, the goal is to rid the body of excess humors. You clutch your stomach, retching into a wooden bucket, wondering how this could possibly make you better. Yet for centuries, this was cutting-edge medicine. The smell of iron lingers in the air, sharp and metallic, as though death itself is close by. You hold your arm wrapped in a rag, the wound stinging the room, spinning. Outside, life goes on. Children chase chickens, women stir pots, men swing axes in the woods. But inside, you wonder if you'll survive the night. Oddly, some recover, whether by coincidence, natural healing, or sheer luck. Patients occasionally rise from their beds, declaring the treatment successful. Stories spread, reinforcing the faith. The barber surgeon nods sagely, pocketing his fee, and prepares for the next victim. Success is loud, failure is buried quietly. Picture a noble hall where a physician recommends bleeding the king for his melancholy. Courtiers whisper approval, even as the monarch slumps pale and exhausted in his chair. Nobody dares question the wisdom of tradition. To them, science has spoken. To you, it looks like slow torture wrapped in authority. The modern mind recoils. Today you pop an aspirin, sip some water, and lie down. Back then, the solution is to weaken yourself further and pray your body somehow fights through. You can't help but laugh darkly at the irony medicine meant to save lives often hastened death. So tonight, as you cradle your aching arm, you wonder if you'll live to see another dawn. Blood pools and the dirt leeches wriggle in jars, and the smell of sickness never leaves the room. In the Middle Ages, health is not about healing. It is about surviving the cure. You wake with a parched throat, your lips cracked from the cold night air. Instinctively, you reach for water, but then you stop. In the medieval world, water is the enemy. It's cloudy sour, often full of things you'd rather not name. A sip could leave you doubled over for days or dead by week's end. So instead, you reach for the safer option, beer. Yes, beer. Or ale, to be precise, weak, cloudy, barely alcoholic by modern standards. Even children drink it daily. It is safer than water because the brewing process, even without understanding germs, kills off some of the nastier surprises lurking in streams and wells. Boiling the mash, fermenting it, and storing it in barrels makes ale the medieval version of bottled water. Historians still argue whether peasants recognized this as science or simply noticed that ale drinkers lived longer than water drinkers. You lift a wooden mug, take a swallow, and grimace. The taste is flat sour, sometimes faintly moldy if the brewer rushed the process. It quenches thirst, but barely. The texture is heavy, almost grainy with flecks of yeast still floating. This isn't the crisp golden drink you might enjoy today. It's liquid bread, meant to fill your stomach as much as hydrate. You burp, wiping froth from your chin, then pass the mug to the child beside you. Nobody blinks. It's breakfast. Water sources are treacherous. Wells are often too shallow, tainted by latrines dug nearby. Streams carry waste from upstream farms, dead animals rotting unseen beneath the surface. Even in towns, waste seeps into every gutter, polluting wells and fountains. The very thing that should sustain life instead becomes a slow poison. So you drink ale, all day, every day. It dulls, hunger warms your belly, and keeps you from collapsing. Of course not everyone brews well. A careless hand leaves too much barley husk or ferments too little, and suddenly your ale has turned sour. But even sour ale is better than dysentery. You drink anyway, pinching your nose. Imagine a world where hydration always comes with risk, where every gulp is a small gamble against your own stomach. Nobles enjoy stronger spiced wines, imported if possible. They sip from goblets at banquets, toasting to health with irony thicker than the drink itself. But peasants rarely see wine. For them, it's ale day in and day out. In some villages, ale brewing is the duty of women, who tend pots of bubbling mash as carefully as others tend bread ovens. Brewing becomes as routine as baking, an endless cycle of grains, water, fire, and fermentation. The smell of yeast clings to everything, to homes, to clothes, to your very breath. When you laugh, your teeth stained from poor hygiene, the sour scent of ale lingers in the air. It is the perfume of survival, the aroma of necessity. You can't escape it. Even children stumble about slightly tipsy from their breakfast drink, though the alcohol content is low enough to keep them from outright drunkenness. Ironically, drunkenness is still common. Stronger ale circulates at festivals, and some men overindulge, staggering through muddy streets while neighbors shake their heads. Hangovers are brutal in a world with no painkillers. But for many, ale is worth the risk. It numbs hunger. It dulls pain. It makes the bleakness of life a little softer. And who can blame them? You think of modern water bottles, clean sealed, sparkling with condensation. Here such purity is unimaginable. You'd give anything for a sip of something fresh, cold, and safe. Instead, you swallow another mouthful of warm, flat ale. Tell yourself it's better than dying. So the mugs pass, day after day, from hand to hand, lips to lips. The children drink, the elders drink, and you drink too. Because in this world, survival has a taste, and it tastes like barley. You hear the scratching before you see it, a faint scuffle in the rafters, claws scraping wood tails flicking in the shadows. Then comes the squeak, sharp and piercing, followed by the flutter of straw as something darts across the floor. Rats. They're everywhere, constant companions in the medieval night, and they bring with them an army of fleas. You clutch your cloak tighter, trying to ignore the movement in the corner. The rats don't just steal food. They spread sickness with every step. Their fleas bite, itching at first, then swelling. You scratch until blood beads under your nails, but the relief never lasts. The bites burn and sting, and worse, they carry diseases you cannot see. Historians still argue whether medieval people connected rats directly to plague, or whether they blamed only the air, the stars, or even divine punishment. But to you sitting here with vermin scratching inside the walls, it's clear something foul rides in with them. The smell tells part of the story. Rats leave droppings everywhere on the rushes, spread across the floor, inside the grain sacks, even on bedding. At night, you feel their tiny paws scurry across your legs, searching for crumbs. Children cry out in fear, swatting at them, but nothing keeps them away. Cats help, yes, but even the best hunter can't stop the tide. Rats breed faster than you can kill them, multiplying until they own the house as much as you do. It isn't just homes they infest. In towns, rats swarm through marketplaces, gnawing at hanging meat, darting under tables, in taverns, even nibbling wax from candles. They are bold, unafraid of humans, because humans are everywhere. And where humans live, food follows. The line between settlement and infestation blurs until they're one and the same. You toss a pebble at the corner, and hear the scrabble of retreat, but only for a moment. They'll return. They always do. Their fleas cling to your ankles, tiny legs tickling against skin before stabbing sharp mouth parts into flesh. The itch spreads maddening as you try not to claw your own skin raw. And when fever follows, a week later shivers buboes swelling black in the groin and armpits, you know it wasn't just an itch. It was death's whisper. The great plagues ride on these creatures. You've heard the stories. Whole villages gone silent. Doors barred with no one left alive inside. Priests toll bells endlessly. Gravediggers stagger with exhaustion. And still the rats scurry untouched by the sickness they deliver. They slip through alleys, over ships' ropes, into storerooms, always carrying death. And people whisper that it is God's wrath that no man can escape. Yet the truth might be simpler. It's a flea, no bigger than a crumb, riding on the back of a rat in your own home. You scratch at your arm, the skin, red and irritated. Beside you, your neighbor mutters charms, hanging sprigs of rosemary and sage by the window to keep out disease. Another burns incense, choking the air with smoke to drive away bad vapors. And still, the rats watch from the shadows, whiskers twitching as if amused. Think of it today, we shudder at a single mouse in the pantry. In this world, a dozen rats in one room is normal. Children chase them with sticks. Adults stomp them beneath boots. And still the scratching continues. You live with them the way you live with rain or cold, constantly unwillingly, but inevitably. And so tonight, you curl under your blanket straw, rustling ears tuned to the sound above. You pray the fleas bite someone else. You pray the shadows stay still. But the truth is harsh rats own the night, and you are merely their guest. The night air is heavy, and you shift uncomfortably on your straw bedding. Something else gnaws at your mind. Something every medieval household must contend with. Where does all the waste go? Glance at the corner of the room, where a battered clay pot squats like a silent threat. The chamber pot. By day, it sits tucked away, but by night, it becomes a grim necessity. You shuffle over, careful not to trip, and use it in the dark. The smell rises instantly sharp and sour, filling the room, already thick with smoke and sweat. There is no flush, no clean water swirling things away. Only a pot waiting to be emptied in the morning. And when morning comes, the task is dreaded, carrying the reeking burden outside to toss it into the street or ditch. Historians still argue whether people cared about the filth accumulating below their windows or simply accepted it as part of daily life. In towns, it's worse. Imagine narrow cobblestone streets, homes pressed tightly together, and above you, windows opening with a creak. A cry of warning might come gardy-loo in some places, or a local equivalent, but often there's no warning at all. A splash follows, and suddenly you're drenched in your neighbor's waste. Urine and dung mingle with mud pooling in gutters trickling downhill until it joins the river. Children play nearby, their bare feet splashing through puddles that should never exist. The smell is constant, thick as a blanket you can't escape. Visitors from cleaner lands describe medieval towns as stinking pits, where even churches reek of the waste thrown against their walls. Perfumes and incense mask some of it, but nothing truly hides the stench of thousands of chamber pots emptied daily. Richer homes try for more dignity. Privy's essentially wooden seats built over pits offer privacy and a direct drop. Castles boast garderobes, small rooms that jut from the walls, waste falling through a chute into the moat below. But even these are far from sanitary. Imagine strolling by a fortress only to see refuse trickling down its walls. The moat, rather than a barrier to enemies, becomes a cesspool breeding disease and stench alike. The buzzing of flies is the soundtrack to this life. They swarm over everything: food wounds and certainly waste. At night, you swat at them half asleep, the sound of wings constant in your ears. Their presence is more than annoyance. They carry sickness, landing on bread after visiting dung. You eat anyway. What choice do you have? And yet life continues. People laugh, trade, and feast in towns where waste flows underfoot. Children learn to leap over streams of filth. Vendors shout above the smell, and lovers whisper in alleys where the air stings your nostrils. It is all normal. Survival dulls disgust. You think of modern plumbing, clean bathrooms, flushing water soap by the sink, the luxury of privacy, the miracle of hygiene. Here, none of it exists. Instead, you live in a world where waste rains from above, where chamber pots overflow, and where the line between indoors and outdoors blurs under the weight of stench. Tonight, as you drift to sleep, the chamber pot sits quietly nearby, its contents ripening in the smoky air. You pull your cloak tighter, burying your nose in the wool, and pretend you don't notice. Because in the Middle Ages, you don't escape waste, you live with it day after day, as unavoidable as the cold itself. The crackling fire fades low, and with it comes the silence of another cold medieval night. But not everyone in this world lies alone under a rough wool blanket. Tonight you hear laughter drifting through the village. Wedding bells have rung, vows have been spoken, and two people, often little more than children, are bound together for life. Marriage in the Middle Ages is rarely about love. It is about property alliances and survival. For peasants, it may mean combining fields and labor. For nobles, it means power, land, and political leverage. But what shocks you most is not the practicality, it is the age. Girls as young as 12 or 13 are led to the altar veils trembling as they step into adult life far too soon. Boys, often only slightly older, stand stiffly beside them, trying to look like men, while still figuring out how to hold a plow. You imagine yourself at that age, suddenly told you are a spouse. Childhood games vanish overnight. Dolls are traded for babies. Laughter for labor, innocence for duty. And yet, to medieval families, this is normal. Life expectancy is so short that waiting until 20 to marry would seem reckless. Parents want grandchildren before death claims them, and marriage is the surest path. Historians still argue whether the Church's rules, setting minimum ages and discouraging clandestine unions, were widely enforced, or whether communities simply followed their own customs. The wedding itself is not glamorous. Peasants gather in a small church, or even outside the priest, mumbling Latin few understand. Afterward, there's a feast of bread, cheese, and ale. If you're lucky, maybe some meat. Music drifts from fiddles or drums, and guests dance in the mudskirts and tunics swishing with every step. For nobles, the scale is larger banquets. Musicians elaborate garments, but the weight of expectation is heavier too. A noble bride of 13 might be sent to live in her husband's castle, a stranger in a new world, her body expected to bear heirs before she's truly grown. The first night is dreaded. A young girl, barely past childhood, is ushered into bed with a man she hardly knows. Privacy is rare, and sometimes witnesses are expected to confirm the marriage is consummated. The pressure is enormous, the fear even greater. Modern sensibilities recoil at the thought, but in this time, it is duty. A household must produce children, and quickly, because children mean labor, lineage, and security. And those children, they arrive fast, often one after another, with little care for the toll on the mother. Many brides are mothers by 14, widows by 20, and grandmothers before their 30th year. The cycle spins endlessly, with little thought for the individuals trapped inside it. Your body is not your own. It belongs to your family, your spouse, your village. Romance does exist, but rarely within marriage. Lovers' tales sung by troubadours speak of forbidden passion outside the marital bed. Inside marriage is often practical, cold, even hostile. Some couples learn affection over time. Others live as strangers beneath the same roof. Yet the community expects you to smile at the feast, to bear your role with dignity, whether you are 13 or 30. Picture a noble wedding in a great hall. Candles flicker against stone walls. Tapestries glow with embroidered saints, and the bride, still a child, bows before a husband twice her age. Guests toast, musicians play, and everyone pretends this is joyful. Outside, peasants whisper, half in envy, half in pity. The girl's fate is sealed, and her future, however brief, belongs not to her, but to the family name she now carries. You think of modern weddings, white dresses, vows spoken from love, tears of joy. In this world, none of that matters. Here, the wedding ring is a shackle, not a symbol of romance. So tonight, as bells fade and laughter dwindles, a new bride curls beneath rough blankets, shivering with fear and duty. Childhood has ended. And in the Middle Ages, marriage is not the beginning of happiness. It is the end of innocence. The morning sun slants across the village, and you hear the clang of iron long before you see its source. At the edge of the square stands the blacksmith's forge, its fire roaring, its smoke curling skyward. Yet for all its heat, the work produced here is not just horseshoes and nails. It is punishment. The smell of scorched flesh and singed hair lingers faintly in the air, for this is also where justice is served. Medieval justice is swift, public, and often cruel. A thief is caught stealing bread. What happens next is not a quiet trial, but a spectacle. Villagers gather curious and eager as the culprit is dragged to the center of town. There is no court-appointed lawyer, no careful weighing of evidence. Instead, punishment is delivered where all can see. And it is meant not only to hurt the guilty, but to terrify the rest. Historians still argue whether such displays reduced crime or simply entertained the masses, but their brutality is undeniable. Branding is common. The iron, heated until it glows red, is pressed to bare flesh. The hiss fills the air, a sound that makes even spectators flinch. The victim screams, twisting in pain, the stench of burning skin gagging those nearby. The letter burned into the flesh marks them forever. T for thief, F for forger. You imagine carrying such a scar visible on your face or hand, announcing your shame with every gesture. There is no rehabilitation here. Punishment brands not just skin, but identity. The pillory and stocks are other favorites. You're shoved into a wooden frame head and hands trapped, unable to move. The crowd gathers, jeering, throwing rotten food, dung, or stones. Children laugh, dogs bark, and you stand helpless, enduring not only the physical pain, but the humiliation. Hours pass slowly as your neck cramps, your wrists ache, and your pride is stripped away. For villagers, it's entertainment. For you, it's torment. Worse punishments await more serious crimes. Hanging is common bodies swaying in the wind at crossroads to remind all of the price of lawbreaking. Sometimes, the body is left to rot, birds picking at flesh, a gruesome warning to travelers. In cities, executions are staged like theater. Vendors sell food, musicians play, and the crowd cheers as the condemned meets their end. Death becomes not a private tragedy, but a public festival. Torture also has its place. The rack stretches bodies until joints pop, the thumb screw crushes, fingers hot irons sear flesh. Confessions are extracted not through truth, but through agony. You cannot help but marvel at the dark ingenuity of it all, humans devising endless ways to make each other suffer and calling it justice. Even minor missteps can bring punishment. Gossip too loudly about a neighbor fines or a whipping. Argue with the wrong official stocks. Poach a rabbit from a lord's land, hanging if unlucky. The laws favor the powerful, and the poor bear the brunt. Justice is not blind. It sees clearly who has land, money, or noble blood. And yet, villagers accept it. Punishment is spectacle, a reminder that order exists, however cruelly enforced. People gather not only out of fear, but fascination. Children watch with wide eyes, learning what not to do. Adults whisper about the condemned, speculating on their sins, secretly relieved it is not them. You think of modern courtrooms, judges in robes, lawyers arguing verdicts debated. Here it is, simple crime, punishment, pain. No lengthy appeals, no questions of fairness. Justice is written in scars, broken bones, and hanging bodies. Tonight, as you curl into your smoky hut, you cannot shake the sound of sizzling flesh, the sight of jeering crowds. Justice in this world is not about balance. It is about fear. And as long as fear keeps people in line, the blacksmith's fire will never go out. The bells toll faintly in the distance, their sound somber, heavy with warning. You shuffle along a dirt path, eyes drawn to a figure approaching from the opposite side. A cloaked man hobbles slowly, face partly hidden, but the soft metallic jingle gives him away. It is the sound of the leper's bell. In the Middle Ages, leprosy is one of the most feared conditions imaginable. The disease leaves skin mottled numb, sometimes ulcerated, and faces twisted by lesions. To most medieval minds, it looks like sin made flesh. A person with leprosy is considered cursed, marked by God for some hidden failing. Fear spreads faster than truth. And so, those diagnosed are pushed away, cast out of homes, families, villages. Their new identity is exile. The bell is their warning. A leper must carry it, ringing softly to alert others of their approach. Townsfolk scatter mothers, pull children close, vendors cross themselves, and doors slam shut. The message is clear. You are unclean. You are dangerous. You are not one of us. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed leprosy was as contagious as plague, or whether the stigma was more spiritual than medical. But the effect is the same. Fear creates walls higher than any castle. For many, life continues only in leper houses, small communities at the edges of towns. Here, those cast out live together, surviving on charity and prayer. Churches sometimes sponsor these settlements, offering food and alms in exchange for prayers. Yet the life is bleak. You are trapped among others, suffering the same fate, watching faces and limbs slowly distort while the outside world pretends you no longer exist. Imagine being forced into one of these communities. You were once a farmer, a craftsman, a mother. Now you wear a hood to cover sores, carry a stick to keep distance, and depend on handouts to survive. Your body betrays you with numb fingers that can no longer grasp tools, with wounds that fester because you cannot feel the pain until too late. Each day is a slow erosion of identity. The church preaches that lepers carry Christ's suffering, that caring for them brings salvation. Some nobles donate land or money to leper hospitals, proudly boasting of their charity. but charity often comes with disgust. Food is tossed from a distance, contact avoided, and prayers spoken hurriedly, as though kindness might invite contamination.